All right, check out this clip. China just caught an orbital class rocket booster out of the sky on a ship with a giant net. This is a massive deal for many reasons. It is China's first controlled recovery of a booster after an orbital launch, and the clearest sign yet that SpaceX, the United States' greatest strategic advantage, is about to face a manufacturing scale challenger. Now, let me be clear. This does not mean China has caught up to SpaceX all of a sudden. SpaceX has landed Falcon boosters, their workhorse rocket, roughly 600 times. China has recovered one, and this vehicle has not yet been flown a second time. That gap is enormous. But every industrial cost and ramp curve, essentially how quickly a piece of hardware becomes common, has a moment when the question changes from can they do it to how quickly can they scale it. July 10th, 2026 may have been that moment for China's reusable rocket program. And if it was, this is much bigger than one rocket landing. This is the beginning of a serious US-China competition over who can put the most infrastructure into space at the lowest cost. Because the country that can launch cheaply, frequently, and reliably gets to build more of what modern civilization increasingly depends on. Things like communication networks, navigation, weather, Earth observation, missile warning, intelligence satellites, and eventually much more advanced and important things like industrial infrastructure, large-scale computing, lunar and Mars bases, and resource extraction beyond Earth like on asteroids and other celestial bodies. So let's look at what China actually proved and what it did not prove with that rocket launch. The next phase of this race may come down to the one thing China is exceptionally good at, turning an engineering breakthrough into manufactured scale, which is something that Matic, the sponsor of this video, is extremely good at as well. I have a Matic robot vacuum in our house that we use every single day. It is the most reliable robot vacuum we've ever owned, and I truly mean that. No other robot vacuum has come close. It runs a 5-camera vision system powered by AI, which is the same pure vision approach Tesla uses with FSD. And just like a Tesla, it gets software updates that make it smarter over time. The app is easily one of the most intuitive apps I've ever used, and we've named him Roberto, long for Rob, robot, get it? He's great with the kids, and my wife, who has some of the highest cleaning standards on the planet, doesn't hate this thing, which basically means it's a 1,000-star review on Amazon. If you want to check it out, use my referral link in the description or the comment section below. And thank you so much to Matic, our great sponsor, for sponsoring this video. Now back to China's game-changing rocket. The rocket from the clip is called Long March 10B. It launched from Hainan, China, placed its payload into orbit, and then did something no other Chinese orbital rocket has successfully done before up to this point. About 6 minutes after stage separation, that's when the rockets come apart, the first stage came back down vertically toward the recovery ship in the South China Sea. But it did not land on legs the way SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket does. The booster deployed hooks and was caught by a net system suspended over the ship. China had moved some of the landing hardware off the rocket and onto the recovery platform. In theory, that can save weight on the vehicle and leave more capacity for payload. Essentially, you can put more weight in this stuff in the rocket to put into orbit. That is not a copy and paste version of the Falcon 9 landing. It's far from it, actually. It is a different answer to the same economic problem. How do you get the most expensive part of the rocket back without throwing away too much payload capacity? And China did this on the first flight of the Long March 10B. That's extremely important because the reusable version of this rocket is designed to carry about 16 metric tons to low Earth orbit. This is not a tiny demonstration vehicle hopping a few hundred feet above a testbed. It launched a real payload to orbit and then recovered the first stage at sea. And the milestone also did not appear from nowhere. In December of 2025, the private Chinese company Landspace sent its Zhuge 3 rocket to orbit, but the booster failed during the landing attempt. A few weeks later, the state-backed Long March 12A also reached orbit and failed to recover its first stage as well. Those failures were evidence that China had entered the part of the process where real flight data starts replacing computer models, because data from the real world is always infinitely more important and useful than data from simulations. And then 7 months later, we end up where we are today. That is the first thing people should understand. China did not wake up one morning and suddenly discover reusable rockets. It has spent years developing engines that can restart, guidance systems that can steer through re-entry, thermal protection that can survive and return, and recovery systems that can catch a falling skyscraper in the freaking ocean. The catch is the part that people physically see with their own two eyes, but it's only a fraction of a percent of the work that went into the development and creation of the rocket. And that is exactly how SpaceX built its lead. SpaceX's first successful Falcon 9 landing came in December of 2015. Its first successful landing on a drone ship came in April of 2016. And then came the hardest part of the process, inspecting the booster, refurbishing it, flying it again, and gradually turning recovery from a spectacle or viral clips on social media into routine operations. That last step is where the real economics of this entire system lives, and what turns it into a killer business model. Recovering a rocket is not the same as reusing one cheaply. If the booster comes back damaged, it needs months of inspections or requires so much work that building it would be easier. The landing is an economic failure. So the landing alone is not the whole picture. SpaceX has spent a decade driving through that entire curve. By 2025, Falcon 9 flew 165 orbital missions in a single year, and SpaceX was responsible for more than half of the world's orbital launches, and some Falcon boosters had flown more than 30 times. That means China isn't one landing behind SpaceX, it is hundreds of recoveries, years of refurbishment data, and thousands of operational decisions behind, and this is right before SpaceX begins to ramp up its Starship program with real payloads for itself and its customers. And Starship is going to do far more work than Falcon 9. One catch does not dethrone SpaceX, but it may remove the most important technical objection to China becoming a serious challenger. For example, SpaceX's Starship rocket is able to land on a tower that will literally catch it with giant mechanical arms so that the rocket can be placed on the launch pad right away and flown up hours later. That is incredibly elegant and looks incredible, but the biggest variable in this industry is not the elegance of the landing. It is the cost of putting 1 kilogram into orbit multiplied by how often you can do it. So think of launch capacity as the shipping network for the space economy. You can invent an incredible satellite or a lunar machine or an orbital computing system, but if every shipment doesn't happen that often and is brutally expensive, most of those ideas never see the light of day. But if you lower the transportation costs and increase the cadence, those projects that look ridiculous start becoming businesses. This is what reusable rockets changed for the United States. SpaceX didn't just save some money on aluminum and engines and materials, it created a launch machine that could fly often enough to build Starlink, replace satellites quickly, serve commercial customers, and carry national security payloads at a pace most competitors could not match. That produced a flywheel. More launches create more flight data. More data improves reliability and turnaround. Better turnaround lowers cost and creates room for more launches. More launches make giant satellite networks possible. Those networks then create demand for even more launches. SpaceX built the railroad and then became one of the biggest customers of that railroad. It just so happens that railroad goes to space. And for the last several years, that flywheel gave the United States a huge lead in routine reusable orbital launch. Not quite a monopoly on space access. China already had a major launch program, and other countries could reach orbit, but something close to a monopoly on high cadence booster reuse at orbital scale. China could reach space, the United States through SpaceX could increasingly treat access to space like an industrial process. And this is where the manufacturing question gets uncomfortable for the United States. China is the largest manufacturing economy in the world. It has dense supplier networks, enormous equipment capacity, and a growing commercial space sector. It also has a track record of taking technologies such as solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, drones, and shipbuilding to a scale that changes global pricing. Rockets are harder than consumer electronics. National security rules will keep much of that launch market divided, and a state-backed Chinese rocket program does not face the same incentives or constraints as a private American company. But you still need to take them deadly serious because they have a track record of making world-class manufacturing processes across many industries. This is not a one-off thing. Once China proves the core engineering, it tends to attack manufacturing cost, supplier depth, and production volume with extraordinary force. Just think about this for a second. The net capture system itself, how they're doing this rocket, is a very Chinese answer to the problem. Instead of making every booster carry the full weight and complexity of landing legs, they put more infrastructure on a purpose-built ship. That plays directly into a country with vast shipbuilding capacity and a deep industrial base. And maybe this particular recovery method turns out to be brilliant, or maybe saltwater, loads, refurbishment, or ship operations make it less useful than it appears. We don't know yet. This is actually something companies like SpaceX had to endure, which I cover in my new book, Master Plan, What Elon Musk is Really Building, which helps people understand what is actually happening at the cutting edge of innovation. If you're interested, I'll have links for that in the description and the comment section below. But the next steps for China's program are very obvious. The steps will be the same booster flying again, then flying again quickly, then doing it enough times that the cost per launch actually falls. That's what actually matters. But why does any of this rise to the level of a national competition? Because space infrastructure already sits at the foundation of military power and ordinary life on Earth. Modern forces use satellites for secure communications, navigation, weather, missile warnings, reconnaissance, targeting, and awareness of what is happening across the planet. Civilian economies depend on satellite timing and positioning for shipping, aviation, telecommunications, finance, agriculture, and emergency response. If one side can launch more sensors, replace damaged satellites faster, and build larger communications networks, that does not mean it literally controls the world, at least for now. It does mean it has more resilience, more information, and more options when a crisis arrives. The war in Ukraine made one part of this very obvious. When ground communications were attacked, a commercial satellite network, Starlink, which is SpaceX, became critical infrastructure. A privately built constellation suddenly became essential to battlefield operations. Now imagine that lesson applied across communications, navigation, missile tracking, compute mining, factories, and Earth observation. Launch capacity becomes more than a commercial service. It becomes a crucial strategic advantage. Why do you think the United States started the Space Force? And both the United States and China understand this deeply. China is already building large low Earth orbit communications constellations, including Guowang and Qianfan. I didn't pronounce those right at all. They are still far behind Starlink in deployed scale, but the basic demand is the same. A country planning to launch thousands of satellites needs rockets that can fly often without throwing away the first stage every time. That is why this booster recovery is so important. China does not have to guess where the demand will come from. It is building the satellite networks and the launch systems together, just like how SpaceX built Falcon 9 and now Starship in tandem with Starlink. Starlink can't exist without the rockets. The rocket cadence cannot exist without Starlink. It's one system. The competition in low Earth orbit is also more complicated than saying there's only room for this many things. Space is enormous, and no country owns a slide of low Earth orbit simply because it arrived first, at least for now. But useful orbital shells, radio spectrum, ground network access, collision risk, and debris management are real constraints. If you put tens of thousands of satellites into similar altitudes, suddenly the coordination problem becomes much harder. Early scale can shape standards, supply chains, customer relationships, and the physical environment everyone else has to operate in. So there is room for many companies and countries to build enormous businesses in space. This is not a winner-take-all market. It is also not an empty frontier with zero first-mover advantage. Whoever gets there first with massive scale gains an unbelievable advantage over everyone else because of space's inherent advantage of having unbelievable access to the surface of the Earth and direct access to the quasi-infinite energy from the sun, which leads to the longer-term advantage of this entire thing. Things like orbital data centers for AI compute with quasi-infinite free energy from the sun, a permanent lunar industry, Mars settlements, and asteroid mining. Every one of those futures begins with the same requirement: to move a massive amount of hardware beyond Earth without destroying an expensive rocket on every trip. The country that builds the cheapest, highest volume transportation layer gets more chances to learn. It can attempt more missions, lose hardware, replace it, improve it, and build infrastructure while everybody else is still figuring out how to ramp that end-to-end process. The reality is the United States still has the lead, a very large lead. SpaceX has routine reuse and operating constellation, a decade of recovery data, and a launch cadence China has not matched. Blue Origin gives the United States a second serious reusable launch effort, and Starship, if it achieves rapid full reuse, could move the cost curve again before China closes the current gap. But China's advantage is different. It can coordinate state goals. It can commercial launch companies, satellite manufacturers, infrastructure, and a manufacturing base that has repeatedly shown it can scale hard technology. So the next space race will not look like Apollo. It will not be one dramatic mission followed by the planting of a flag and an epic speech. It will look like factories, launch pads, recovery ships, satellite assembly lines, spectrum filings, and thousands of missions that barely make the news because they are so common. Just like how trains, when they were first built, were this incredible technology, but how often do you hear about trains nowadays? Never? The same thing will happen with rockets. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was informative and helpful, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Mwah! Bye-bye.